What is this? Hello? Why can't I? Ah. Ah. I'm testing my audio sounds. Because I did realize that somehow there was an offset between the audio and the video, and so I synchronized that. Yeah. The S sound is very sharp with this microphone. But I can't really help that right now because that's the only equipment I have available. Just saying. Okay. So I can just do it like this now. All right. Wow. Like, I kid you not, it took me a lot of determination to decide to do this now. Because for some reason, sometimes I just get tired. And no matter how long, I don't need as much sleep anymore as I used to, at least on some days. Right? There are some days where I really don't need as much sleep anymore. It's incredible. There really are days where I only sleep like 2 to 3 hours. And then I wake up and I'm actually fine. I don't know how that works. I used to need a lot of sleep. But now it seems like all I want to be is awake. I just have to get used to that. Now I picked a book today. I have no idea if it's actually okay to do this. Copyright and stuff. So I won't say which book it is. Yeah, it's called His Dark Materials 1. And it's the first novel of the series. It's called Northern Lights. It's actually quite interesting. But I won't say anything until I get there. Yeah. I like the quote on the back. It says, "Without this child, we shall all die." So you do play an important part. Because each of us can pull his or her own weight and then contribute. Because we all need to work together. Right? Because they say, without this child, we shall all die. But the child would also die if nobody would have helped it. You see, We all need each other. So if I want to make a living from sitting here and reading stuff and give you time to spend with somebody else, then I need people who want somebody to spend time with, right? I mean, that's just how it is. And you know, I had to acknowledge that at some point, that, you know, I need everybody else out there as much as whoever needs me, right? So I had to become like a friendly companion that just holds this space, but that also has to realize, you know, I don't know, there will probably be times where I can't be online. It's just important you understand that. There will be times where I just don't want to be online or live. So you just realize, I mean, there's enough stuff on this channel that gives you a lot of things to work with. Like, I've worked my ass off to put what I have to say out there in many, many ways. So if you think you need me live here, then you also have to realize that I'm also doing other things, right? I'm living my life, I'm making other things, and sometimes I have to take a step back from all this doing live sessions. I'm doing it now because I have a lot of time for it. But one reason I'm doing this is because I actually want to have less time for this. So I will always, I believe, how I see it now, do live sessions occasionally because I like it. But certainly much less, because sometimes you just need to take some time off. But when I can, I will do it. You know, I will skip all these things that come before that. Or okay, let's just start in the beginning. Right, it says Northern Lights. You know, all these, I really don't understand. If you write a book, why do you have to put in the what other people say? Because they just say that because they want to praise you, so that they can say that they've said it, and then it's basically blah blah blah. Okay, so it's 3 books. Yeah. I think if you want the whole experience, you just have to read it yourself. Okay. I really don't want to read these things. I have to wonder if I'm actually going to read the book at all. I also have to learn to sit straight, right? I'm just gonna cover myself a bit with a blanket. Oh yeah, that's nice. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, the blanket is much better. You know, I really have done a lot of work, so holding this position is much easier. I'm just saying. Lyra and her demon moved through the darkening hall, taking care to keep to one side, out of sight of the kitchen. The 3 great tables that ran the length of the hall were laid already, the silver and the glass catching what little light there was, and the long benches were pulled out ready for the guests. Portraits of former masters hung high up in the gloom along the walls. Lyra reached the dais and looked back at the open kitchen door, and seeing no one, stepped up besides the high table. The places here were laid with gold, not silver, and the 14 seats were not oak benches but mahogany chairs with velvet cushions. Lyra stopped beside the master's chair and flicked the biggest glass gently with a fingernail. The sound rang clearly through the hall.
"You're not taking this seriously,"
whispered her demon.
"Behave yourself."
Her demon's name was Pantalaimon, and he was currently in the form of a moth, a dark brown one, so as not to show up in the darkness of the hall. You see, just saying, this is very hard. I've read this book already a couple of times. But when I'm reading this now, now this is now the end of the page. And it doesn't say who's saying this. So sometimes I just don't want to make voices. So, I'm not too concerned. But just so you know, right, sometimes I'm a bit confused because these are readings of madness after all. I cannot, I'm not an audiobook recorder. I'm just a guy that reads you a book. And, I don't claim that I know how to pronounce all these things. I mean, it says demon, but it's written with an A and an E. So is it demon or daemon? I don't know. Right? I'm just saying demon because I assume that's how it's pronounced. Also have to say that the books are much better than the series. The movie is fairly good, but also something I would like to say about these books, that the movie was not perceived very well, but it was actually quite good. Now, one of the reasons they said at the time when the movie was released or hit the cinemas, one of the reasons it wasn't as well perceived was because there is an organization in that book called the Magisterium, and that's basically like the church. And they said that the church was making anti-propaganda against these books. And now you think the church is open-hearted and all about truth, right? And it's like, love your neighbor like yourself. But they can't have people making movies where you could see what they're really all about, which is making money and having power. So no wonder nobody takes Christianity or Christians very serious. But the movie was fairly good, but the books are better. They're making too much noise to hear from the kitchen, Lyra whispered back. And the steward doesn't come in till the first bell. Stop fussing. I'm always distracted about things I want to say, right? Do you hear this? Oh, it smells good. That's the beauty about books. They give you a real feeling and something to touch, right? Oh, wow. It's like a real experience. So yeah, sure, they're made of wood. And trees had to die for this. And resources are being used. But while you're reading this, you're actually not using as much electricity. And plus, I sometimes think books are being used anyway. So there's so many books out there. I mean, there's so many people buying books. Then I sometimes think, why should I be the only person who says I'm not gonna buy books anymore? Because as long as books are available, I mean, if humanity in its totality starts to decide now we don't want to print anything anymore because resources are really gone, then okay, I'm gonna jump on that train. But until that, it's like, sure, I get it, cars make the air toxic. But do I have to be the only one who has no car? Because that's how it would be at the moment. Because in a fast-paced world, there are certain things that I need in order to join this kind of crazy life. So I also want to dive into it, right? And maybe I should try diving into that book because it says I read stuff, and now I'm just making another one of my... it's like, how am I supposed to sit here? I think I'm just gonna squat. Because then my face is more like turned. This is better. Lyra whispered back. And the steward doesn't come in till the first bell. Stop fussing. But she put her palm over the ringing crystal anyway, and Pantalaimon fluttered ahead and through the slightly open door of the retiring room at the other end of the dais. After a moment, he appeared again.
There's no one there,
he whispered.
But we must be quick.
Crouching behind the high table, Lyra darted along and through the door into the retiring room, where she stood up and looked around. The only light in here came from the fireplace, where a bright blaze of logs settled slightly as she looked, sending a fountain of sparks up into the chimney. She had lived most of her life in the college, but had never seen the retiring room before. Only scholars and their guests were allowed in here, and never females. Even the maidservants didn't clean in here. That was the butler's job alone. Pantalaimon settled on her shoulder.
Happy now? Can we go?
He whispered. Don't be silly. I want to look around. It was a large room, with an oval table of polished rosewood on which stood various decanters and glasses, and a silver smoking mill with a rack of pipes. On a sideboard nearby there was a little chafing dish and a basket of poppy heads. They do themselves well, don't they, Pan? She said under her breath. She sat in one of the green leather armchairs. It was so deep she found herself nearly lying down, but she sat up again and tucked her legs under her to look at the portraits on the walls. More old scholars, probably, robed, bearded, and gloomy. They stared out of their frames in solemn disapproval. What do you think they talk about? Lyra said, or began to say, because before she'd finished the question, she heard voices outside the door.
Behind the chair, quick,
whispered Pantalaimon, and in a flash, Lyra was out of the armchair and crouching behind it. It wasn't the best one for hiding behind. She'd chosen one in the very center of the room, and unless she kept very quiet, the door opened, and the light changed in the room. One of the incomers was carrying a lamp, which he put down on the sideboard. Lyra could see his legs in their dark green trousers and shiny black shoes. It was a servant. Then a deep voice said, "Has Lord Asriel arrived yet?" It was the master. As Lyra held her breath, she saw the servant's demon, a dog, like almost all servants' demons, trot in and sit quietly at his feet. And then the master's feet became visible too, in the shabby black shoes he always wore.
"No, master,"
said the butler.
"No word came from Aeroduck either."
"I expect he'll be hungry when he arrives. Show him straight into hall, will you?"
"Very good, master."
"And you've decanted some of the special Tokay for him?"
"Yes, master. The 1898 as you ordered. His lordship is very partial to that. I remember."
"Good. Now leave me, please."
"Do you need the lamp, master?"
"Yes, leave that too. Look in during dinner to trim it, will you?" The butler bowed slightly and turned to leave, his demon trotting obediently after him. From her not much of a hiding place, Lyra watched as the master went to a large oak wardrobe in the corner of the room, took his gown from a hanger, and pulled it laboriously on. The master had been a powerful man, but he was well over 70 now, and his movements were stiff and slow. Just have to stiff and slow because he probably never did any stretching, mate, and because he got too comfortable. I mean, you have to keep moving, even at an advanced age. You have to move and you have to stretch, you have to be flexible, and that's why I squat, because it keeps my legs flexible. The master's demon had the form of a raven, and as soon as his rope was on, she jumped down from the wardrobe and settled in her accustomed place on his right shoulder. Lyra could feel Pantalaimon bristling with anxiety, though he made no sound. For herself, she was pleasantly excited. The visitor mentioned by the master, Lord Asriel, was her uncle, a man whom she admired and feared greatly. He was said to be involved in high politics, in secret exploration and distant warfare, and she never knew when he was going to appear. He was fierce. If he caught her in here, she'd be severely punished, but she could put up with that. What she saw next, however, changed things completely. The master took from his pocket a folded paper and laid it on the table. He took the stopper out of the mouth of a decanter containing a rich golden wine, unfolded the paper and poured a thin stream of white powder into the decanter before crumpling the paper and throwing it into the fire. Then he took a pencil from his pocket and stirred the wine until the powder had dissolved, and replaced the stopper. His demon gave a soft, brief squawk. The master replied in an undertone and looked around with his hooded, clouded eyes before leaving through the door he'd come in by. Lyra whispered,
"Did you see that, Pan?" "Of course I did. Now hurry out before the steward comes."
But as he spoke, there came the sound of a bell ringing once from the far end of the hall.
That's the steward's bell, said Lyra. I thought we had more time than that.
Pantalaimon fluttered swiftly to the hall door and swiftly back.
The steward's there already, he said, and you can't get out of the other door.
Wow. Squatting certainly is a challenge. The other door, the one the master had entered and left by, opened onto the busy corridor between the library and the scholars' common room. At this time of day it was thronged with men pulling on their gowns for dinner, or hurrying to leave papers or briefcases in the common room before moving into the hall. Lyra had planned to leave the way she'd come, banking on another few minutes before the steward's bell rang. And if she hadn't seen the master tipping that powder into the wine, she might have risked the steward's anger, or hoped to avoid being noticed in the busy corridor. But she was confused, and that made her hesitate. Then she heard heavy footsteps on the dais. The steward was coming to make sure the retiring room was ready for the scholar's poppy and wine after dinner. Lyra darted to the oak wardrobe, opened it, and hid inside, pulling the door shut just as the steward entered. She had no fear for Pantalaimon. The room was somber-colored, and he would always creep under a chair. She heard the steward's heavy wheezing, and through the crack where the door hadn't quite shut, she saw him adjust the pipes in the rack by the smoking mill, and cast a glance over the decanters and glasses. Then he smoothed the hair over his ears with both palms and said something to his demon. He was a servant, so she was a dog. You see, he was a servant, but so she was a dog. The gender of the demon is always the opposite. But a superior servant, so a superior dog. In fact, she had the form of a red setter. The demon seemed suspicious and cast around as if she'd sensed an intruder, but didn't make for the wardrobe, to Lyra's intense relief. Lyra was afraid of the steward, who had twice beaten her. Lyra heard a tiny whisper. Obviously, Pantalaimon had squeezed in beside her. We're going to have to stay here now. Why don't you listen to me? Oh, we're going to have to stay here now. Why don't you listen to me? She didn't reply until the steward had left. It was his job to supervise the waiting at the high table. She could hear the scholars coming into the hall, the murmur of voices, the shuffle of feet. It's a good thing I didn't, she whispered back. We wouldn't have seen the master put poison in the wine otherwise. Pan, that was the Tokay he asked the butler about. They're going to kill Lord Asriel. You don't know it's poison. Oh, of course it is. Don't you remember? He made the butler leave the room before he did it. If it was innocent, it wouldn't have mattered, the butler seeing. And I know there's something going on, something political. The servants have been talking about it for days. Pan, we could prevent a murder. I've never heard such nonsense, he said shortly. How do you think you're going to keep still for 4 hours in this poky wardrobe? Let me go and look in the corridor. I'll tell you when it's clear. He fluttered from her shoulder, and she saw his little shadow appear in the crack of light. It's no good, Pan. I'm staying, she said. There's another robe or something here. I'll put that on the floor and make myself comfortable. I've just got to see what they do. She had been crouching. She carefully stood up, feeling around for the clothes hangers in order not to make a noise, and found that the wardrobe was bigger than she thought. There were several academic robes and hoods, some with fur around them, most faced with silk. "I wonder if these are all the masters," she whispered. "When he gets honorary degrees from other places, perhaps they give him fancy robes, and he keeps them here for dressing up. Pan, do you really think it's not poison in that wine?" "No," he said. "I think it is, like you do. And I think it's none of our business. And I think it would be the silliest thing you've ever done in a lifetime of silly things to interfere. It's nothing to do with us." "Don't be stupid," Lyra said. "I can't sit in here and watch them give him poison." "Come somewhere else then." "You're a coward, Pan." "Certainly I am. May I ask what you intend to do? Are you going to keep out and snatch the glass?" "Oh, to leap out." "Are you going to leap out and snatch the glass from his trembling fingers? What did you have in mind?" "I didn't have anything in mind, and well, you know it," she snapped quietly. But now I've seen what the master did. I haven't got any choice. You're supposed to know about conscience, aren't you? How can I just go and sit in the library or somewhere and twiddle my thumbs, knowing what's going to happen? I don't intend to do that, I promise you." "This is what you wanted all the time," he said after a moment. "You wanted to hide in here and watch. Why didn't I realize that before?" "All right, I do," she said. "Everyone knows they get up to something secret. They have a ritual or something, and I just wanted to know what it was." "It's none of our business. If they want to enjoy their little secrets, you should just feel superior and let them get on with it. Hiding and spying is for silly children." "Exactly what I knew you'd say. Now stop nagging." The two of them sat in silence for a while. Lyra uncomfortable on the hard floor of the wardrobe, and Pantalaimon self-righteously twitching his temporary antennae on one of the robes. Lyra felt a mixture of thoughts contending in her head, and she would have liked nothing better than to share them with her demon, but she was proud too. Perhaps she should try to clear them up without his help. Wow. Her main thought was anxiety, and it wasn't for herself. She'd been in trouble often enough to be used to it. This time she was anxious about Lord Asriel, and about what this all meant. It wasn't often that he visited the college, and the fact that this was a time of high political tension meant that he hadn't come simply to eat and drink and smoke with a few old friends. She knew that both Lord Asriel and the Master were members of the Cabinet Council, the Prime Minister's special advisory body, so it might have been something to do with that. But meetings of the Cabinet Council were held in the place, not in the retiring room of Jordan College. Then there was the rumor that had been keeping the college servants whispering for days. It was said that the Tartars had invaded Muscovy and were surging north to St. Petersburg, from where they would be able to dominate the Baltic Sea and eventually overcome the entire west of Europe. And Lord Asriel had been in the far north. When she'd seen him last, he was preparing on an expedition to Lapland. "Pan," she whispered. "Yes? Do you think there'll be a war?" "Not yet. Lord Asriel wouldn't be dining here if it was going to break out in the next week or so." I'm really telling you, reading things aloud is really hard work. I'm just saying, it's not really easy. So I really have a lot of respect for people that read a lot, but I'm already getting bored. Oh yeah, it's not that long, because I just want to read one chapter, by the way. Plus also, while I'm reading, all these thoughts come up. I hear a noise that distracts me. I think, maybe I should drink now. I think maybe I should go to the toilet. I think maybe I should do all kinds of things, right? Then I feel like I'm getting hungry. Then I feel like I want to drink a coffee. All these needs that aren't really needs, but that I have to deal with. So now I want to do something, and then all these needs bring me out of it. So sometimes I actually don't want to drink because I don't want to pee, so that I can just do things without peeing. So I think it's actually better if you drink maybe a lot in the morning, and then for a while you just drink nothing. Yeah. Because you don't have to drink all the time. You can actually drink too much. So for me, these sessions when I read something, yeah, it gives me something to do, that's for sure. But it also just gives me something to get me into the mood of talking about other things, right? Once in a while. Oh wow, that's an interesting idea. Because if sitting gets too tiresome, you might as well stand upright. I was thinking about watching a movie once while standing. Yeah, I mean, you can do that. You can do whatever you want, right? Just because everybody's watching movies when they're sitting, I mean, you can just watch them while standing. But when you're standing, you actually want to be active. So, well, what's the point of watching a movie? Like in general, what's the point in watching a movie, right? So now I have to change the settings a little. Oh, wow. Sometimes I just see things that are, it's just funny to me, right? To other people, it wouldn't be funny. But if I see some people, they have like glasses and I don't know, you just see, they don't know how to live. You just see it. And to me, it's just really funny. Because to them, of course, it's a very serious business and they're very afraid of life. They don't know what to do, right? They don't know how to eat, how to move. Well, then figure it out, man. But they just walk around with their glasses. And I see these people and I think, my God, how blind can you be? How can you not understand that glasses just make you lazy? I mean, they try to force me to wear glasses when I was in 4th grade, in kindergarten. I hated that. But then at one point, because they said, yeah, your eyes are bad, you have to wear glasses. But how few people understand that glasses make your eyes lazy. And they actually make you adjust to because your eyes are weak. So you have to train them. You have to stretch them, just like your body. If you don't move your eyes enough because you're always just looking at a screen, yeah, you're gonna wear glasses. And my eyes got better. Well, they're not completely healed yet, but I'm working on that. Because one day I just threw my glasses away and here I am reading a book. It's a bit blurry, but at least I'm making an effort, right? I'm not putting on glasses and pretending my eyes are fine, or I can see. You actually see less through glasses because they filter out a lot of stuff, especially if it's plastic. It just filters out a lot of stuff. It's so terrible what humans do to themselves, you know, to hide from the world and from life. Just don't get that. It's like people sitting in wardrobes, looking at life like Lyra now. I want to see what's going on. Yeah, but you're not actually a part of it, right? You're just sitting there. You're just sitting there. Yeah, I'm very bad at reading this. I'm very bad at reading this. I mean, yeah, you can say, you know, I've got a really nice voice. But to be honest, why I don't like reading this, because it's like, you know, I don't have to read this whole book. You know, this is just something. You know, I just read stuff, right? I don't say this is an audiobook. I want to read to you, you know, because this makes much more sense. You know, why do we need to have somebody reading Harry Potter to us? It just makes no sense. Okay, I'm giving you something that I find meaningful. This is the book I mentioned, Sexual Energy Transmutation by J. Onwukwe. Onwukwe, yeah? It says, sex energy is the creative energy of all geniuses. There never has been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in this driving force of sex. The energy must be transmuted from desire for physical contact into some other form of desire and action before it will lift one to the status of a genius. Well, I'm not so sure. Because I still have a desire for physical contact, and lots of it. And I do still masturbate, although I masturbate without ejaculation. And I still would say that the way my mind works is the way the mind of a genius works. And I can do that. Yeah, but if you do masturbate, learn to redirect the energy into your body instead of out of it through in the form of an ejaculation. That's a very essential thing. Okay, so I think this is, which chapter is it? Does it say that anywhere here? It's semen here. You know, it says it all. This book, it's a very short read. It's like only about 100 pages, and it teaches you basically what you want to know. Look at this. Contents: first introduction, then creative energy, the genius, then sex motif, the activator, sexual desire, procreative trigger, harmonization, water versus fire, sexual intercourse, a mutual union, mutual exchange, the equalizer, spiritual communion, 2 are 1, semen, most precious possession, suppression, a losing battle. Yeah, because if you're just trying to suppress your sexual drive, it will destroy you, because you're trying to suppress the very essence of life. You have to channel that, because if you're trying to keep it down, it will just get like, so you have to keep channeling that. And I mean, if you look at all the content I'm creating, you realize that I'm channeling a lot of it, but not nearly enough. Because if I only channel myself into this kind of work, then I'm fighting a losing battle, because I also have to do other things, right? I have to channel this kind of energy into also taking care of myself. Okay. To transmute is to change in nature or form. Alter in essence, Webster it says. In alchemy, transmutation is the supposed change of a baser metal into another of greater value. I want to read this other one because, you know, what's the point if I don't read something that has meaning to me specifically? But which one? Let's stick with transmutation. My God, I'm so uncertain sometimes. Ancient alchemists reputedly tried to transmute lead into gold through secret chemical processes in their hideouts. But for man and his thoughts, mind is the crucible in which the alchemy of energy transmutation takes place. It is in the mind of man that one type of thought, energy, or desire transmutes into another. Through conscious mind action, focus, and intent, man can restructure and project mental energy forms to yield forth their physical equivalents. That's like the idea of manifestation, right? And that begins in the mind by visualizing what you want to have in your life and then making the choices based on your feeling, you know, that feel like will bring you to your desired output. Sexual energy naturally builds up in the body of a healthy man or woman who refrains from excessive or wasteful sexual activities, and who indulges in the sex act with love and harmony. Such accumulated sexual energy gradually converts into other energy forms, which the man or woman can draw upon at times of need. So drinking coffee is actually counterproductive to this process, because you ingest something that releases a lot of energy and draws it out of you all at once. But that means you're actually robbing yourself of energy, because you have a lot of energy available at once, but somehow it's also leaking out of you, right? So drinking coffee releases energy, which means it cannot build up. Which means if it cannot build up, because how transmutation works is you build up energy that's coming in through your root chakra, right? That's where sexual energy enters the body. Sexual energy is raw potential energy. It builds up and it builds up. And that's like pressure. And then if you let that energy flow, then there's a constant stream of energy. And you're just transmuting it by doing things, right? By keeping yourself active and busy. You know, you're cleaning, you're making food, maybe you're eating, I don't know, right? You're speaking, all kinds of things. This is like energy is flowing. Now, if you overexert yourself, so I do have to sleep, right? I do have to sleep, I do have to eat sometimes, you know, when I feel like it. But if I have a lot of fear in me and I'm trying to get rid of that by overeating, you know, my body cannot transmute energy because it doesn't flow freely. You know, it's trapped somewhere in the stomach. And that means if I drink coffee, a lot of energy is released at once. Right? People eat and then they drink an espresso. So they eat food that makes them feel heavy and sleepy, but then they want to keep working because they cannot allow themselves to sleep now because then people think they're lazy. And then the coffee keeps them from sleeping. The best time to sleep is often after you've eaten. You know, a lion, after he's fed, he's going to be lazy for a while. So that's how I see it. Right? Sometimes it's better to actually eat when you want to rest. And then you just laze around for a bit. And then you wait, and then you wake up. And then you keep working. I think that's a much better way. So coffee, you know, it's like trying to force the body to tap into resources that are like your reserve. And that's what I see in a lot of people. You know, they're like so empty, they've got nothing anymore. But they just keep drinking coffee because they're afraid to let go and rest a little, because fear keeps them going, right? Because they're running away from it. So they're being chased around through life like complete idiots. But they don't know that. All they know is, I just have to keep going. And they drink so much coffee, like, oh my god, more coffee. Ah. You know, that's what I see in them. You know, they try to hide that, but I see it. That's how people are running through their life. That's how they live. And then one coffee after another. Oh my god, I'm getting tired. I can't sit behind my laptop and work anymore. Another shot of coffee. Like, oh my god, I'm getting tired. But they're running on such low reserves. There's nothing. They're already at the end. And then the coffee just like draws out. It's stupid. Yeah, I'm doing the same sometimes. Right? If I start to get tired, what do I do? Instead of working this tiredness out of myself, I sometimes masturbate. But I could also be doing this. But when I feel heavy, of course, you know, I want to give in to the heaviness. Instead, I could be, or I could go for a walk or something. I haven't done that in a while. Maybe I should do that. I don't know. In its primal form, sexual energy is stored in the root or sex chakra at the base of the spine. But when conserved, it accumulates, sublimates, and moves up through the spinal cord into the other energy centers of the body, especially the crown. This natural sublimation process takes place even without any conscious effort by you. And you could actually transmute sexual energy without knowing it. However, being knowledgeable and aware of this raw but potent creative energy available to you and directing it purposefully greatly amplifies its effectiveness and its potential to yield superior outcomes. That's actually the point of letting go, right? To trust that it's going to happen automatically. I always have the feeling I have to actively transmute energy, but it actually happens by itself. All I have to do is trust my feeling and do what my feeling tells me to do right now. But somehow I find that very hard. Because you have to get used to this also, to the amount of energy you suddenly have. Yeah, you have to get used to the kind of work you can suddenly do. It's incredible. While a naturally induced normal process of sublimation slowly redirects sexual energy into other creative outlets, transmutation is a conscious activation of the sublimation process. Sexual energy transmutation rechannels sexual potency into genius and creativity. It is a conscious switch of the urge for physical, sensual release into a surge of mental and emotional stimuli. Transmutation rechannels the ever-surging creative energies in man, away from a wasteful downward and outward flow, into a beneficial inward and upward return that nourishes and invigorates the body and the brain. Now, to say that a bit easier, because sometimes these people use really fancy words. So if you accumulate energy, then instead of pushing it out, it actually accumulates and then it moves up your spine, through your chakras. And this flow of energy also cleanses the chakras. And that means your body begins to heal. And you start to have more energy because now energy is surging through you. You become like, there's like a river filling you with life and the desire to express yourself, because this kind of energy seeks expression. But if you're blocking this form of expression because maybe you've been denied that as a child, or you never learned how to express yourself creatively. Also, cooking is a form of creativity, right? Then you first have to teach yourself which methods you like. It's important to do that. That's as simple as anybody can make it for you. And then your body naturally starts to heal. And suddenly you do things you thought, where does this come from? When did I get so strong? Wow. Now I feel hunger, but it actually isn't. Because when you fast, your body starts to move from digesting food to transmuting energy, which I call digesting energy. And that is a very weird process, because if you're used to feeling full, then digesting energy, which is always there, is a very weird feeling. And I constantly think, I should just stop eating, because I would have much more energy, but I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid I can't control it. That's the whole point, right? To not control it. We've just read it. It happens automatically. But if you're controlling it, it can't happen. But still, I'm afraid of it. It's so weird. Yeah, so invigorates the body and the brain. So energy can flow freely if you also have cleansed your body and stuff. That's what I realized. I first had to cleanse and detoxify my body so that it can actually channel this stuff. Because if you have all these toxins inside of you, energy can't flow freely. So fasting or an anorganic sulfur cleanse or whatever you do, drinking certain teas, eating less sugar, no meat for sure, meat is highly toxic stuff. You just have to look at how these animals live. So you eat their suffering, basically. Accumulated sexual energy sublimates into superior creative abilities, which manifest in various forms depending on your personal needs, aspirations, disposition, pursuits, and capabilities. So you just become better at what you're doing, it says. Thus, based on your peculiar circumstances, you may, why do you have to say it like this? Thus, based on your peculiar circumstances, you may experience stronger intuition, increased mental alertness, improved clarity of thought, greater understanding of issues, persistence, faith, courage, and enthusiasm that propel you to higher pedestals of success in your endeavor or niche. And who's supposed to understand that? I mean, that guy clearly has no idea who the people are that he's talking to. Because now it seems like the only people he's talking to are like people who had a lot of schooling. I mean, it's like really endeavor or niche. I mean, you may be talking to somebody who doesn't know the word niche. So it's very complicated. So what you could say is, thus, based on your peculiar circumstances, like, fuck off, mate. Can't you just use simple words? It's even, for me, it's hard to translate that. But you could just say, depending on where you stand in life, or depending on, the circumstances of your life, or the position you find yourself in, there are certain things that might happen to you. Such as, your intuition may get stronger, right? Your alertness increases. You have a clearer, your thoughts are much clearer. You are better able to understand problems, have more persistence. You're more persistent, you have more faith. Okay, that's easy. You have more courage and enthusiasm. And then that propel you to higher pedestals of success in your endeavor or niche. And these traits help you to do what you want to do. Yeah. So we all need to somewhat specialize. I've specialized now in these creative things that I'm doing. That's what I specialized in. So if I'm trying to do all the other things, because I think that would make me look better or whatever, I'm denying myself of things that actually come naturally to me. Because it comes naturally to me to stand here and proclaim and to talk, right? That comes naturally to me. And at the moment, it feels more natural than, I've spent days now just inside this room. I never left it. Only to, go to the toilet or eat, or maybe do the dishes or something. But the rest of the time, I'm just in that room. I only once left the house to bring trash out. And then I see people running up and down, and I think, should I go running because it's healthy? But then I think, why? Let them go running if they think they have to go running. I don't want to go running at the moment. I go running when I feel like it's time to go running now. And that's what it means with intuition. My intuition is guiding me to get to where I want to be. But that also means I have to look at, okay, what do I want? Because what I want is often opposite of what I actually need. Because I might want to go outside and play in the forest, but to reach my goal, I need to be in here and be active in the community, right? And so I often force myself to stay put for a while, just to get through the process. And so I also, right now I cannot just go shopping. Because first of all, there's no money available to me at the moment. But yeah, I'm being provided with food. So I don't have to leave the house. So I make sure I assist the people I'm living with by doing dishes and cleaning up and stuff and bringing out trash. That's what I do. So I'm running out of black tea. And I've been drinking black tea every day for several months. Like really strong dosage black tea. I've been drinking that every day. And now I'm going through a transition. I've run out of black tea. I only have one bag of black tea left. And I'm only drinking the one in bags because I ran out of the leaves, the leafy black tea. And so now I have to get used to that. Now I'm drinking green tea. It's very different. And I'm drinking coffee at the moment, but only for a certain period. So that helps me to transition, to move from one form to another. I often induce change in the way I live, right? Sometimes I eat more, sometimes I eat less. Sometimes I drink more like this, sometimes I drink more like that. Sometimes I work with rapé, sometimes I do nothing. Sometimes I do more sport, and sometimes I do other things, right? It's like, okay. Transition, change, so you can induce change from the outside to bring about a change on the inside. So if you want to bring about a change on the inside, it's probably good to stop drinking coffee for a while and to learn how you could feel if you wouldn't drink coffee. But for that, you have to pay attention, which is then what it says: improved clarity of thought, increased mental alertness, greater understanding of issues, persistence, faith. So fasting is an act of faith that can teach you a great deal, right? And to put trust in yourself is an act of faith. You start believing in yourself. So your endeavor or niche, well, you have to find your niche, because there's a lot of us out here. You have to find your niche, what you can do, because what I realized is, if I only tried to live for myself, I wouldn't stand here, because that's an empty existence. As a human, you want to give. So you have to figure out what you can give. And then you do a service to the community, and that gives meaning to you. Because I couldn't work for these kind of weird corporations that just exploit everyone. So I want to give freely what I want to give. My time, hopefully at one point, to a certain degree also in exchange for money, because that's what, right, we deal with. I wouldn't need people to give me chickens, because I have my own ideas of what I need then to do with that money. And so yeah, in this kind of world, you work for money. Or you get money in exchange for work. You could say, I work for life. And if people think that I'm doing a good job working for life, to promote life in all its facets and how to live life a bit better and harmonious, then they might say, oh, this young man is doing such a good job, I'll buy his book, or I'll donate some money with him, for him, to him, whatever. Sublimation creates a natural reservoir of creative energy which, when harnessed and properly directed, manifests as greater vistas of love. Who talks like this? Nobody. Faith, imagination, intuition, order, judgment, and understanding. But one thing I understood is that it doesn't matter if you get every word in here. You just read the book, right? You just read it once. You just read through it, and you don't hang on to, oh, I don't understand what he's saying. It doesn't matter. You read it once. You just read it through. It doesn't matter. You just read it, one word after another, and then you keep living your life. And I dare you, a year later, you're going to read it again and suddenly you understand it. Or parts of it. Because when I first read it, I didn't understand it. And suddenly I was doing it. And suddenly I was doing it. Because I also wanted to do things, right? You know, I read this and then I do something, what I feel like, and then my feeling guides me to understand what this book is on about. You know, that's how I generally do it. I look at a video of people dancing and then I realize I want to find my own way of dancing, my own style. So I first look at how other people are dancing and then I trust my feeling to guide me to work out how I can dance, how I want to dance. Because that's a feeling, right? How do I want to express myself? But I have to first also concern myself of movements. You know, how can the body move? What is the potential? And how would I like to move? So if you hear me talk or see me do what I'm doing, then you have to be aware that I was unable to do any of that until I started doing it. And I started with writing a book and then doing a podcast. First the podcast, then the book. And I started with art, with these paintings and images. And then videos, and then music. And suddenly I was doing all of it at once. Suddenly I make an image and then I look at what that image says to me emotionally. Then I write a story or a song from that. And then I record that. And then I make a video from it. Right? So I figured it out. Just kept going. You know, one step at a time. I first focused on this. And when I felt sure about doing it, I added something else. Right? So if you have, let's say you masturbate a lot, you drink a lot of coffee, and you eat a lot of sugar, you know, then you could try to stop doing all these things at once, but that's just gonna hammer you. So what you could do is either you stop eating sugar for a while, or you stop masturbating for a while, or you simply stop drinking coffee for a while. I mean, you can try all of them at once. But don't feel too frustrated when something backlashes. You know, I'm still backlashing. I say I don't want to eat sugar at all anymore. And then I try that for 5 days and then I'm eating a piece of cake. But that's okay, because if I eat a piece of cake every 5 days, to me it's better than how it used to be, because I was eating every day pancakes with a lot of sugar. And now every couple of days I eat a bit of sugar. Then to me, it's an improvement. But I first had to learn, oh wow, I can also work without sugar. Right? It's an experience that I needed. Oh, I can do that. Wow. Yeah, as greater vistas of love, faith, imagination, intuition, order, judgment, and understanding. Plus the will and the zeal to take requisite actions that make your aspirations and intentions come to fruition. I really wish they would stop talking so fancy. The secret of great achievers. The men of greatest achievement are men with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation. You see, that's what I would negate, because actually opposite, it doesn't say what he just said. He said who have learned the art of sex transmutation. But if learning is an active process, and he said that, some people, they actually don't know they're doing it. Because what the art about that is to simply let go and give into where. That's what art is about. You don't control it. I don't sit around and then I try to control what I want to draw. No, I just put down the pen and then I just start moving it. And then I see, how the image starts to take shape. If I would try to control that because I want to think, I'm doing this, but I'm not doing it. It's happening through me. Something wants to show itself. I'm just revealing it. That's how I do, when I write a book. I don't control that. The words start flowing. Sometimes I control it. Sometimes I want to draw something, but it's not as nice. It's nicer if you create something and you look at it and you think, where did that come from? Sublimated sexual energy as pure creative potency is a great reservoir of all shades of spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical powers, which man can draw upon in times of needful. Now there's a list of things that you might need it for. Acts of great courage and bravery, scientific research and breakthrough, scholastic and intellectual works, great works of art and music, oratory and statesmanship, spiritual revelations and breakthrough, leadership and personal success, wealth creation and accumulation, excellence in competitive sports, and much more. You see, not only excellence in competitive sport, because I like to play sports for myself. I don't like to play sports as a form of competition, although I do see that sometimes people think they have to compete with me, but I don't like people who want to compete with me, so I simply just start to ignore them. Because people who want to compete with you, they're constantly trying to fight with you. And I don't like that. They're trying to look down on you. And that makes it very hard to be eye to eye with somebody if he feels like, oh, I look bad next to you, so I have to show you that I'm better than you. I have no interest to be better than you. I just want to be as good as I can be for myself. And also for humanity. I don't want to have all this competition. I'll leave that to the people who get off on winning. To me, it's not about winning. It's about, playing nicely together. Which means when I play chess, I don't think I have to win. Okay, a part of me does. But the other part says, I just like the game. I'm not too fussy about losing, but I also don't want to lose all the time. I do want to know how to win, but I don't have to cling to winning. Because sometimes somebody else needs a win. And because I can lose, that person can then win. Thought is an invisible creative energy that is always on duty. On duty. Sometimes this also has to rest, because thoughts can terrorize you. Wherever thought goes, energy flows. Thus, after the butterfly years, as man matures in mind and body, and as the fires of youth naturally begin to subside, Less attention or creative energy is invested on matters of sex. This frees up mental, emotional, and spiritual energies to flow into other important issues of life. This is the natural onset of sexual energy sublimation, albeit unconsciously. Now, the thing in this society is that we are all, not we, but most men, even women, but let's stick with men, are trapped in their root chakra because they never work on their trauma. If you don't work out your trauma, you may look like a 50 or 60-year-old person, but inside you're still your teenager, because your trauma is basically, is becoming you. And so you may be 60 and you may still think, oh, I want to sleep with all kinds of women, instead of saying, I have a wife. You might still cling to, I still want to have sex with all kinds of women, because you never let that go. At one point you have to let it go and say, I have a wife now. Because you chose to have one. Because you wanted to have family. God, why do these chapters have to be so long? I've said enough, enjoy.